What deeds are these? What noise assails my ears? What means decoyed my wandering footsteps? Whither do ye lead? Fear not, the steersman said, but tell us fair the haven of your hope, and you shall land whereso your heart desires. To Naxos steer, quoth Bacchus, for it is indeed my home, and there the mariner finds welcome cheer. Him to deceive they pledged themselves, and swore by gods of seas and skies to do his will, and they commanded me to steer that way. The Isle of Naxos was upon our right, and when they saw the sails were set that way, they all began to shout at once, What ho, thou madman, what insanity is this, Acoetes? Make our passage to the left. And all the while they made their meaning known by artful signs or whispers in my ears. I was amazed and answered, Take the helm, and I refused to execute their will, atrocious, and at once resigned command. Then all began to murmur, and the crew reviled me. Up Ithalion jumped and said, As if our only safety is in you. With this he swaggered up and took command, and leaving Naxos, steered for other shores. Then Bacchus, mocking them, as if but then he had discovered their deceitful ways, looked on the ocean from the rounded stern, and seemed to sob as he addressed the men. Ah, mariners, what alien shores are these? 'Tis not the land you promised, nor the port my heart desires. For what have I deserved this cruel wrong? What honor can accrue if strong men mock a boy, a lonely youth if many should deceive? And as he spoke, I also wept to see their wickedness. The impious gang made merry at our tears, and lashed the billows with their quickening oars. By Bacchus do I swear to you, and naught celestial is more potent. All the things I tell you are as true as they surpass the limit of belief. The ship stood still, as if a dry dock held it in the sea. The wondering sailors labored at the oars, and they unfurled the sails in hopes to gain some headway with redoubled energies. But twisting ivy tangled in the oars, and interlacing held them by its weight. And Bacchus, in the midst of all, stood crowned with chaplets of grape leaves, and shook a lance covered with twisted fronds of leafy vines. Around him crouched the visionary forms of tigers, lynxes, and the mottled shapes of panthers. Then the mariners leaped out, possessed by fear or madness. Medon first began to turn a swarthy hue, and fins grew outward from his flattened trunk, and with a curving spine his body bent. Then Lycabas to him, What prodigy is this that I behold? Even as he spoke, his jaws were broadened, and his nose was bent. His hardened skin was covered with bright scales. And Libbas, as he tried to pull the oars, could see his own hands shrivel into fins. Another of the crew began to grasp the twisted ropes, but even as he strove to lift his arms, they fastened to his sides. With bending body and a crooked back, he plunged into the waves, and as he swam displayed a tail as crescent as the moon. Now here, now there, they flounce about the ship, they spray her decks with brine, they rise and sink, they rise again, and dive beneath the waves. They seem in sportive dance upon the main. Out from their nostrils they spout sprays of brine, they toss their supple sides. And I alone, of 20 mariners that manned that ship, remained. A cold chill seized my limbs, I was so frightened. But the gracious God now spake me fair, Fear not, and steer for Naxos. And when we landed there, I ministered on smoking altars Bacchanalian rites. But Pentheus answered him, A parlous tale, and we have listened to the dreary end, hoping our anger might consume its rage. Away with him, hence drag him, hurl him out with dreadful torture into Stygian night. Quickly they seized and dragged Acoetes forth, and cast him in a dungeon triple strong. And while they fixed the instruments of death, kindled the fires, and wrought the cruel irons, the legend says, though no one aided him, the chains were loosened and slipped off his arms. The doors flew open of their own accord. But Pentheus, long persisting in his rage, not caring to command his men to go, himself went forth to Mount Kithaeron, where resound with singing and with shrilly note the votaries of Bacchus at their rites. As when with sounding brass the trumpeter alarms of war, the mettled charger neighs and scents the battle, so the clamored skies, resounding with the dreadful outcries, fret the wrath of Pentheus and his rage and flame. About the middle of the mount, with groves around its margin, was a treeless plain where nothing might conceal. Here, as he stood to view the sacred rites with impious eyes, his mother saw him first. She was so wrought with frenzy that she failed to know her son, and cast her thyrsus that it wounded him, and shouted, "Hi, come hither, ho, come hither, my two sisters. A great boar hath strayed into our fields. Come, see me strike and wound him." As he fled from them in fright, the raging multitude rushed after him. And as they gathered round, in cowardice he cried for mercy and condemned himself, confessing he had sinned against a god. And as they wounded him, he called his aunt. "Autonoe, have mercy. Let the shade of sad Actaeon move thee to relent." No pity moved her when she heard that name. In a wild frenzy, she forgot her son. While Pentheus was imploring her, she tore his right arm out. Her sister Ino wrenched the other from his trunk. He could not stretch his arms out to his mother, but he cried, "Behold me, mother." When Agave saw his bleeding limbs torn, scattered on the ground, she howled and tossed her head and shook her hair that streamed upon the breeze. And when his head was wrenched out from his mangled corpse, she clutched it with her blood-smeared fingers while she shouted, "Ho, companions! Victory, the victory is ours!" So when the wind strips from a lofty tree its leaves, which touched by autumn's cold are loosely held, they fall not quicker than the wretch's bleeding limbs were torn asunder by their cursed hands. Now, frightened by this terrible event, the women of Ismenus celebrate the new Bacchantian rites, and they revere the sacred altars heaped with frankincense. End of Book 3, Part 3.